Hey there, this is your pal Pally, and welcome back to Git Er Raid. Warlords of Draenor beta testing continues, on with some more heroic mode bosses. Flamebender Kagraz is next up in Blackrock Foundry. With a name like that, you'd figure on maybe some flame abilities? You shall not be disappointed. As always, encounters can change from the time beta is conducted until it is live. Once again, we have a boss that relies on energy as a mechanic. Only this time, the boss is granted different abilities as their energy counts up. Once Flamebender reaches 100 energy, she will channel a big AoE, then consume her energy to get a bit of a damage buff, and then cycle back through everything all over again. Rinse and repeat until the flames are quenched. Before we dig into what the abilities are that are tied to energy, let's mention the other two mechanics that the boss will have, and who this Aknor Steelbringer guy is. So first up, Lava Slash is the biggie to watch out for. This is an unavoidable fire line that erupts on a random raid member at ranged. It doesn't hurt too bad, but the evil part is that if anyone else is nearby, not only will it splash the 70k or so damage that it does initially, but it will leap to them and erupt again, doing 70k to them and anyone else nearby. That can get nasty quickly if there are people stacked up. The lesson is, unless you have to stack for some reason, which you do later on, spread the heck out if you are at ranged. Next up, the boss will continue to summon enchanted armaments throughout the entire fight. They are basically weapons that wander around slowly, slashing the space around them. If you get hit, it's a moderate chunk of damage. These weapons serve as a softened rage, as they'll soon be everywhere in the room. Finally, Aknor Steelbringer is a low health ad that starts with this boss. It is completely unclear why he's there. He only does like one ability, and you'll likely kill him before he even gets it off. Maybe he's linked to an achievement for this boss or something. Like keep him alive the whole fight and kill the boss? Who knows, just nuke him and forget about it. So let's go into what the abilities the boss will use as she gains energy. When Flamebender hits 25 energy, she can use Molten Torrent. This is a meteor that targets one person, usually a ranged or healer. There is supposed to be an arrow in a circle around the person, like this. Half of the time on beta, it wasn't working, which is why you'll see it sporadically during this footage. But anywho, the person targeted and anyone within the circle will take around 750k fire damage split among those in there. This would seem like you should just stack it ranged all the time. But wait! Remember, lava slashes happen all over the place, so you need to watch out and get spread quickly after soaking the Molten Torrent. It is cast quite frequently, and since it is given to the boss early on in the phase, get used to handling it a lot. It is good to note at this point that anyone with a damage immunity is able to solo soak this Molten Torrent. Hunters can deterrence, Pally's bubble, etc., etc. I'm not sure the full extent of the class abilities, but if you are really usually able to soak things, you should be able to do this. Moving on, at 50 energy, the boss will summon a pair of really nasty Cinder Wolves. One of them will fixate on a raid member, chasing them for 20 seconds, and the other will be overheated and is tankable. After 20 seconds, the wolves will switch, and the previously fixated one will be overheated and be tankable, and the other one will fixate and chase down people. While they do share a fire beam between them that hurts if you run through it, they do not share a health pool. And in fact, if you bring one down to 0 health, it will start to cast Rekindle, which will heal it back to 30% health. So you need to kill the pair of wolves close to the same time. And of course, not to complicate things any further, but when overheated, the wolf will pump out some fire breath that debuffs people who get hit by the breath to take 200% additional damage from any other fire breaths that come out. This means the tanks have to swap out who is tanking the overheated one so they don't get slaughtered by subsequent breaths. Pretty complicated Cinder Wolves there. And there's more to mention once we get to 100 energy. But for now, the ability granted to the boss at 75 energy is called Blazing Radiance. This is a basic AoE that comes out from a random raid member every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. Essentially, this person needs to get away from other people and not do any stacking for torrents. Now, at 100 energy, we get to the Firestorm. This is a basic AoE channel from the boss that does about 16k fire damage to everyone for 12 seconds every half second. Pretty nasty damage. This is the time for healing cooldowns for sure. Even worse, if you didn't manage to kill the wolves before this goes out, they will double the damage done by this ability, which will likely wipe you. So yeah, those wolves make it even tougher if you don't get rid of them quickly. As I mentioned earlier, after the Firestorm AoE, the boss will consume all her energy and be empowered with Rising Flames. This is a small buff to her damage, as she'll now be stacking a fire dot on the tanks. This doesn't hurt too badly, and tanks should taunt off when stacks fall off, just to be nice to their healers, but it's not very deadly. At this point, the fight starts from scratch and goes through the whole cycle again. If you handled it well the first time through, you are likely going to get a kill, so just keep going. So moving on to strategy, this one is really a positioning check. You have to be aware of being spread for Lava Slash at all times. Even 3 people too close together will die if one of them gets Lava Slash. You have to stack in for Molten Torrent and then get back out quickly. This happens very frequently, so be ready for it. Weapons fill the room, and fire lines are everywhere. It's a big, old mess. But for the most part, it seems guilds would try to keep the boss to the side a bit, while having a central stack point that people were near. Whenever anyone would get Torrent, they would go to that stack point and others would come in as well. Then people would spread back out to their original positions quickly. The mess becomes even messier when the wolves come out. They are the top priority target. No one should be touching anything other than the wolves until they are dead. They are slowable, but not stunnable. Tanks will need to watch for the breath of the overheated one, and swap off the boss and the overheated add a bunch. Raid members should just kite the one fixated on them and keep pew-pewing. Again, there are things you can do positioning-wise here. People should try to kite and avoid running the fire lines between the wolves over anyone. Of course, everyone should be aware of an impending fire line, but hopefully the fixated person can kite the line maybe to the outside of the raid group and go from there. The fixate switches often, so it's not a long job, but people need to be ready to run. On top of the torrents and the dogs, the blazing radiance adds another element that keeps you spread out. Anyone with this dot should stay away. That at least is pretty simple to understand. Beyond that, as mentioned, you want the wolves dead before Firestorm goes out, or else it is likely a wipe. So it's probably best to lust or use major DPS cooldowns during the time the wolves are out. And of course, make sure to bring them down evenly, since killing one and not the other will just cause the dead one to heal back up to 30%. Tricky. Firestorm is of course the time for major healing cooldowns. Nothing tricky about that. Survive it as best you can, and then the fight starts over. Well, the boss has a dot it stacks on the tank, but it's really nothing much of consequence on beta. Tanks will have nothing to do until the wolves come out, and the boss will only stack the fire dot for about 50 seconds. Just swap off if damage is getting dicey. That's about all for this guide on Firebender Kagraz. Tanks swap off for fire dots, tank the wolves that are overheated and swap them between the tanks so that they don't kill you with fire, and finally survive the firestorm with everyone. Healers, keep an eye on the damage from Molten Torrents and Lava Slashes, while also busting out your big girl panties for healing cooldowns during Firestorm. DPS, be active in stacking for Torrents and get away otherwise. Especially stay away if you get Blazing Radiance. As always, please comment, like, and or subscribe to the video if you found it helpful, and have a good one!